Okay, can I start?
Yeah, Kishore sir, could we start?
Yeah, please start.
Pranesh,
Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
what do you think? And most respected speaker for the day, Maria Beatriz Rocha Ferreira from Brazil, and Philip Devlo, Fatima, Kluka, Kishore sir, invited delegates, and my dear friends. Indeed, it's a great honor for us to have a guest speaker from Brazil. Maria Beatriz Rocha. She's a PhD in anthropology at the University of Texas at Austin University, at the Department of Anthropology, USA. Master in Physical Education, Faculty of Physical Education, University of Sao Paulo, USP, Brazil. Developed her career as professor and researcher in the Faculty of Physical Education at State University of Campinas, UNICMP, who's retired, visiting professor at the University of Leuven in Belgium, University of Center Western in Paraná, Federal University of Grand Dourados in Mato Grosso do Sul, and visiting research at Laboratory of Advanced Studies in Journalism, LabJA Unicamp. Her current positions are, since 2007, she has done research at the NGIME, that is nucleus of the research group on inclusion, movement, and distance learning at the Federal University of USD Fora, board members of the NGO Comori, Indigenous, Environmental Action, Culture and Education in Campinas, Vice President of IAPESGW, International Association of Physical Education and Sports for Girls and Women, member of the Development Committee of ICSSPE, International Council of Sports Science of Physical Education, and the main topics, researches, and publications are related with society and culture, emphasizing social diversity, figurational process, power changes, especially indigenous people's games. I think it's such a vast bio. On behalf of the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Government of India, Khelo India, Sports Authority of India, Lakshibai National College of Physical Education, a warm welcome to our most distinguished speaker, Beatriz Ferreira. Welcome to you to this program. A warm welcome to Devlo, Philip, to this program too. I also welcome Fatima, who is an Olympian, a former Olympian. I think this our program has got more weightage since it's with that. A warm welcome to you too. A warm welcome to our most distinguished and the light and the spark for this program, Kluka ma'am. And a welcome to Dr. G. Kishore sir and all the invited guests and the participants. May I now request Beatriz Ferreira ma'am for the session, please. Ma'am, please.
Okay,
So you
good
need
evening.
to share slide sharing. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to start with acknowledgement to the Minister of Youth Affairs and Sports, Dr. Freely, Dr. Usha, and so many other people that are working to be able to organize this Face Live. It's great to be here, and I know how important it is for all of us to share our knowledge. And, I wonder if you can see me or just the slides.
Can you share the screen, please, for your slides? Can you share?
Yeah. Oh. Okay. Can you see? It's good? Okay. Well, and I'm saying that thank you for all of you, and I'm very happy to be here and to share some of the my research and talk more about women and sport. I'm going to speak about the human indigenous peoples games, power and social change, but I decided to have a brief panoramic of Brazil important dates of physical education to give you some idea what happened in the country and some indigenous movements. And then at the last part of the talking, I'm going to speak about women in the games. And when you see Brazil, we have this big country, and we have the small population of indigenous, 0.43%. Then we have the Asian, black, mulattoes, and the white. Then you can see the proportion of all of this. But it's a multicultural, ethnic and racial interbreeding, mutual assimilation of cultures, syncretism.
Beatrice, excuse me, could you speak a bit more louder, please?
Yes. And it's a multicultural assimilation of culture, syncretism, and racial miscegenation. Is it good now?
Yes.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
And when you see when the Portuguese arrived in 1500, and we were about 5 to 10 million of indigenous people. And now in 2010, it was the last demographic census that we had. We have 817 people, only indigenous people, but we have 274 languages, 3 different ethnic groups, and then the land is spread in the country. You can see the green part of the country has the majority of them are there on the border of Colombia, Venezuela, and then in the center east and the south of Brazil. And to give some idea, we have the important dates when they were only natives here, the Portuguese colonizations, the slave period, and then we have this, when Napoleon arrived in Portugal, the king had to move to Brazil, and then they stayed there a couple of years. After that, we had the independence, and then the Republic was 1889. And then, see, it's a new country. It's not like India or, in fact, when the Portuguese were trying to come to Brazil, they were trying to go to India, and then, they came to Brazil. That was the whole story. That's because of India. Okay, but the whole process, related to the indigenous people, we had a lot of violence and then tolerance, and then they want to conquer the new territory for gold mines and expand the territory. And there was this fight between Portugal and Spain at that time. And the priests, especially the Jesuits, had a lot of impact to convert them, but at the same time to avoid the settlers to enslave them. And they had a very important role during the whole process. Okay, but the whole idea since the beginning was to have only one country. I mean, not recognize the indigenous and the other culture, but to have only what they call Brazil, only one language, and they didn't recognize the other languages. And then education for everybody, but only the same structure of education and physical education and sport. And the last century, around 1930, they start searching for what they call a physical education national method in this multicultural country. But they didn't want to recognize the capoeira that was very active among the slaves and the black people, and then some fights and the traditional games that they were among the indigenous peoples. And but they want to bring the whole idea from Europe. You can see the idea of hygienic, moral, military, nationalist, eugenic, medical education, masculinity was the argument or the base of the physical education in Brazil. And they want to give it what they thought that was to give a modern image of the country. If they would bring all these ideas from different cultures, not only from one, that was from Portugal, but from France, from Germany, from England, and the sport was very important here since the beginning. Okay, but then they had this idea to have the women to have this beautiful figure, with the rhythm, ballet, and all this pleasure and exuberance. And for the boys was the military exercise, unit order, command of voice, and posture. But we have some important women like Maria Lenke. She was from a German family, and she started swimming. She was one of the first one to go to the Olympic Games, and she changed the way that women could do sport here through the swimming. That she had a very important. So, but no, in the middle of the last century, they start to recognize the human rights of social and cultural diversity of the country. Different programs start in education, sport, health, government, NGOs, and associations. It was a movement in different areas of Brazil. And the major social change was after 1980. You can see in the sport, the high-level sports, Olympic sports, radical sports, and indigenous women started being more recognized, and the wheelchair dance and inclusion was something important here. And even the paintings, you could see many of these important opportunity, painting all the culture to show the culture of dancing, the Black people, that was related with the religion, and then some gymnastics and circus, all of this. And then after 1980s, the government started having different programs, what they call after school sports and programs, because in Brazil, you have only part-time. The children go only part-time. They don't go full-time. Very few schools have the full-time. And then they had a program after school to have a sport for children, especially for this low social class. And we have a leisure, they start going more and more, and the high-level sports for women, and then the wheelchair, and then the indigenous start showing more in the whole society. And it's interesting that we could have this new law, that was in 1966, they call social inclusion, not only for handicapped people, but to implement the mixed physical education. In the years ago, we had different, women had physical education only for girls and boys for boys. And now they can have a mix. And also the teacher, I could only teach for girls and a man for men, but now a woman can teach for boys or girls and vice versa. That's something happened. We had a very important program here organized by Celafix. Celafix is a center of study in São Caetano do Sul. It's a city nearby São Paulo, see? And they started with Victor Matsudo, a program, a multi-level plan that promotes messages about health and benefits of physical activity. That was some good idea, and it's still now, some of the states use the same protocol, and it's very linked to the medical system. It's not only physical education, but this kind of program is linked to a lot of doctors adapt. The idea is step-by-step model to change behavior, from sedentary to somewhat active, regular active, and more active. It's it goes to old people, elderly, the young people. For a woman was very important because they could do more exercise, to go out, to run, to start cycling. It has a lot of impact on human behavior, especially. And some of the countries, especially Latin America and some in Europe, they adapt the same system, and they call what they call Agita Mundo. They didn't want to change the name. It could be World Agita, but they kept the name in Portuguese, Agita Mundo. And then they celebrated April 7 every year with this kind of program. Okay, now go back to what was happening at that time with the indigenous people. The whole idea, since the beginning, they wanted to have only one country, see? And they were considered transitory subjects. And they wanted to prepare them to enter the civilization, what they call civilization, the whole idea of civilization. And then we had two institutions, the SPI, Indian Protection Service, that was from 1910 to 1967, and NI, that we still have, National Indian Foundation. And, especially the SPI, they protect them from violence, but at the same time, they wanted to help them to enter to the society. And they did a lot of different measures, like changing some of the groups, the communities moving nearby to the city that nowadays have a lot of problems because of this, or to put all of them in some area of Brazil, like in Xingu, in the center of Brazil. But it's the whole idea to integrate. It's an integration policy without recognize their rights. And they want to end the idea of ethnic cultural diversity and to incorporate them to the society. But the world changed. The whole world changed about what they call minorities, indigenous people. It doesn't start in Brazil, but it starts in Canada, United States, New Zealand, and others. They were very important, to mobilize all these different groups in Brazil and other countries. And also have the communication networks. They have a lot of contact. Many people were against the uniformity to have only one country. And I guess the interference of government policy indigenous. That was something very important that was happening here. And also Brazil had to sign a lot of declarations regarding to the indigenous people. If they sometimes, depends on the president gives more attention, depends on the president less attention, the government changes. And they had different kinds of movements here, especially the Catholic Church, they call it Indigenous Missionary Council, helped them a lot with this to empower them with all the process to the human rights. And the social movements, especially for after the Constitution. In Brazil, the last Constitution was 1988, that finally they are going to recognize the social organization, custom, language, beliefs, and traditional, and that they admit, therefore, cultural plurality characteristics of a Brazilian nation, attributing to the union the task of protecting and ensuring the existence of these different ethnic groups and culture. That was something that changed. Okay, now we're going to start about who organized these indigenous games that I'm going to speak. These two brothers called Carlos Justino Terena and Marco Mariano Terena. Terena is the name of the ethnic group that they belong. In Brazil, they have so many ethnic groups that they always put the last name, not officially, but for in common, to show which community they belong. And this one is Terena. And they founded what they call ITC, or Intertribal Committee of Member Indigenous Society. It started in 1990, but they had a history behind this. And when they were very young, they were invited to study in Brasilia to help them to integrate in the society. And they like soccer, they were playing soccer, and they organized the United Nations, and they were more political, to try to understand what happened with them, to know the other culture that they were there, the other indigenous, the colleagues that they belong to other groups. And they start criticizing the FUNAI. They saw FUNAI, there was something wrong. They start to understand what's human rights. They didn't know about that they had some rights. They couldn't even vote. They didn't have passport. They couldn't travel. And they were inside. And then they start complaining. So the government didn't like, but they were invited to go back to their lands, but many of them decided to stay in Brasilia. And they stayed and became a very important leader. And that's what the declaration that he could understand at that time, to start to know the culture of other people. He realized how important was their culture and how rich they had to show relating to sport and traditional games. And Carlos was also helping some young people to go to what they have a youth sport competition in Brazil. It's a very big one, very good one for students. But then he realized also that it was difficult for them to understand the meaning of competition, or the meaning of medal, the meaning to be the best, because in the culture, they celebrate more than they compete. Not they didn't have a war. Yes, that's something else. But I mean, the meaning of the day life and the traditional games was different. And then he had this dream to bring all the culture, the indigenous culture to the city to show that they could see something else. And also his brother, he was in the same area, studying with him, but he wanted to be a pilot, and he was a pilot for many years. But then he wanted to be a pilot of a Boeing, but then realized that he couldn't because he's indigenous, and then there was no private insurance to cover if something happened. And then they start, he couldn't be pilot anymore. Only small ones, but not the big ones. And then he decided to quit and go to become a politician, to be an indigenous political leader. And he is, and now he goes to the United Nations and has a lot of contact with university, association, research. And it's a very interesting man that helped to develop all they call this idea of his brother to bring the games from the lanes to the city to show that they have something else. But they knew there was something very hard because the time and space and power were different. They had to deal with the government, the way of thinking of the Minister of Sport, of competition. And then they had that traditional knowledge, how to put the things together. And then they were living with the same system. One of the most difficult was the bureaucracy to organize the game, to show the expense of the games. That's something that was very hard for them. But they did it. They started in 1996, when Pelé, well, the most important soccer or football player in Brazil, was the Minister of Sport. And then he was very acceptable to have the idea, and then they started. And now the last one was in Palmas in 2015, but they have the first World Indigenous Games here. I'm sorry that was in Portuguese, but that was the last one that they had. They were going to try to have this year, but because of the COVID-19, they quit. So this game, they have the intertribal committee, they're the indigenous people, relate to the Minister of Sports. The money, the biggest money comes from the Minister of Sport, and then the Minister of Education, the Justice, and the Secretary of Sport. That was the base of the organization. The civil societies related to University at IAM, that we did a lot of research with them and then have a lot of exchange with them, the NGOs, media, and public. Okay? And then they have to have a lot of challenge to overcome all the difference between the government, the idea of the Minister of Sport, what sport is, and the idea or they want to bring. And then all this year they were going back and forth. Some of the Secretary of Sport couldn't understand and gave power to them. And some of them said, no, we're organized to have to do what we want. That was very interesting to see how they could deal with them. And they were very politician. Huh? And every time that the minister changed in Brazil, the minister changed a lot. I don't know in India, but sometimes in one government, they had 3 ministers of sport. That was something very new. And they had to start it again to organize. And so what I'm trying to say is that the government and the indigenous had to challenge to move on, to keep doing what they want. Okay, and just to have an idea how it cost, the 2011 that we have the data, we had 1,300 indigenous people there, and the cost of this game is around $306,000 US, putting US dollar. The others are in Brazilian currency, and that's reais, or you call real. But just to have an idea of how it costs. Okay. And for women, was extremely important, the games. To have the opening, they were there, the arena where the game, they showed the games, the handicrafts, social forum that they discuss a lot of different every year was something new about education, about human rights, about health, different kinds of subjects that they discuss. And all of them, they realize that they could see something different, because when they are there, inlands, in their tribes, they don't know the other. Even the women couldn't go out very often. You have the dormitory, they're organized in different ways. A food has something special. Some want to speak, they have some to tell the story of them. And then the displacement of logistics was very hard. Can you imagine? Some people that are in the north, in the Amazon, come to the center west of Brazil, and how hard it is to bring them, or to the east, to the center, and how the logistics was something very important. And then to give some ideas, we have these rituals, the canoe, log running. There was some of them used the log run, but some of them didn't have in their culture. They show only what they have in the culture. The fights, the archery, and the tug of war. That is something very common among them. And it's interesting, the first game there, the first one, the woman would come as a wife or just watch. They start to invite them to watch the game, because many of them didn't have games anymore in their lands. And then, but they always bring children. That's a problem, because the children get sick. But the woman never leave the small children at home. I mean, with the neighbor or with the family, they always bring the children. But they always come for the dance and the rituals. They come sell the handcraft, and the social form was very important. See, some of the decoration that they said that she came to get to know other ethnic, create friendships, to know the other culture, and that was a Carajá woman. Knowing the other relatives, you only see through sometimes on TV. They don't show too much indigenous people on TV here in Brazil. And then the Kaigang leader, she was a very important leader here from Kaigang, from the south of Brazil. And then she was there because she was going to present some information on Rio 20 conference. That was a very good one. And in the United Stations, and then she went to India too, some conference there, and then she was there to get information, to bring what they want to tell her, and she could share the experience this woman, she's a lawyer. See, that we have a very good one, and that during that game. Some of the information, you said that women didn't play football in the old times. Now they can do it, because she saw the games. She couldn't realize they could play because the other one were playing. She would go back and then talk with their organization, and then she had more power to play sports. And some of them, that's a declaration of that lawyer, said that they had very little alternative of leisure in their country, in their lands, and alcoholism is very high, and the games, it helped them to do more sports and to start being recognized how important is the archery, the body painting, and all other traditional games. You can see you need to sometimes to have this national organization and sport to help to be recognized how important it is. Otherwise, all those traditional games were in the mind of the old people. They were not practiced anymore. And there is also this declaration that she says that the father was responsible to invite all of the women to go to the city to have sport, and she was a very good one. And then she was always invited. But then when she got married, she quit, because in general the husband doesn't let the woman to go. But she was so good that the father kept invite her, and that she was there to represent, and she won. So for them, you can see that these games gives a permission, and then she can show the myth, their culture, and then the symbolic words that have this difference, these ethnic groups. Every practice has a symbolic meaning. It's not because they are fighting, that was someone in Xingu. The same fight means the same thing in another group, another community, another ethnic group. See the Chavante ones, that's in red one, the football, the way that they play, similar, but the meaning, what's behind is different. The log running, the same. And then you can see what brought the idea of belonging to these games. They could help see the differentiation. They are different from the other ones. It was ways to exercise authority. They realized the difference of ethnic groups, overcoming barriers, even when you go back and with the husband. Many of them divorced because the men didn't accept anymore that they want to do more sports. But everything starts changing in good ways for them. And then they start complaining more. And we have a lot of what we call cacique. Cacique is the head of that we call tribe. We don't call tribe anymore. That community, we have a lot of women as a cacique. That's something that new in old times. It was not possible to have. And this change of behavior between men and women, and the young accept more and more. And also they realize they have some rights related to the states. And you can see the ethos is present in the organization of the teams and men. In general, you can see the father is a man, the coach is a man. I have never seen a woman as a coach. Problem they have now. But in general, a man is the coach. But they help them to go more to the city to be more accepted. And what's made the difference, because years ago, many years ago, women had power, but only inside of their lanes. They used never go to the public life. And now they go. They have more participation in the public life. They build a new social roles, and then they rethink their different way of being, their rights, in national society. And but if you see the games that they are showing there, still they are much more male or men than women. And then you can have all this like log running variation, very few women, and then the iron more male because it was more related to hunting. The war hope, there was something that was common for all of them. Canoe is more for men. Archery variation, the women start now, but very few, just to play. Different fights, yes, you can see the boiling ball because of the football. Some of the ball that they play with the head, that's only for men. The Zarabacana also related with hunting. The running, all of them run, and swimming, all of them. Well, almost to the end, the women can become more visible through their handicaps, dance and games, sports, soccer, to rename themselves and to build a new identity. That's something important for them. And these men and women are in process of empowerment, self-determination to national and international levels. And the games, and then they reflect the indigenous protagonism and the leadership. That's something very important for both of them. The tension between indigenous leaders and the government in the past represented this inequality and different interests. They have different interests, but they're still fighting. They want to have the rights, and with the help of the National Union, to help the UNESCO and all the international organizations. And this abyss diminished as the government and indigenous leaders, they managed to work together even under tension, in power struggle, because they see how many games they could do. And then for human rights was great. You know, they start understand more human rights. The women trying to understand better and then to fight more for this. And the revitalization of culture and piercing purple life for women, that's something new, but before women would never go there. And very few that had the leader. And they have this feeling of being recognized as women. That's not only for non-Indigenous people, but in their lands, in their communities. They feel that they are more recognized. Exercise of indigenous rights, not only for men, but also for women. That's something that they have this idea better, more clear. And expanding network of interdependence, because they have many of them coming out to study in the school, in the university, who have the quota for indigenous people to come to study. It's not easy for them because the way of they thinking, their knowledge, but they are fighting, and many women are coming, men and women, and then for all of this. Well, I have some reference, reference. And then once more, I would like to thank you for your attention. And that's my email. If you would like more questions, I'll be glad to ask. Okay.
Yes, it was a wonderful session. It was nice. So can we take some questions, please? Can you hear me? Are you ready for questions? For questions? Sanjay, can you just talk to me? Beatrix, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, now just for some questions. Over to Dr. Sanjay Prajapati. Do you want me to ask?
Thank you, ma'am, for this wonderful session. So I'll ask question. So there is one question. What is the difference between traditional and modern game? And how can you define the difference in methods? How we can apply the methods in traditional and modern game? What is the difference actually?
Okay, well, the traditional games for the indigenous are related to their culture, the meaning, and they are in the ritual of religious ritual. It's not religion, but the myth is related to their myth. Like rock running, they celebrate, they used to celebrate when they had a very good hunting. They could gather in some food for their tribe or their lands at that time. And then the men would come with a log run to celebrate life, to celebrate. The celebration is something very important. They were not very interested to win. In fact, all these games were inland, or belonged to their culture. They didn't show to the other ones. See? And now when they bring it to the city, they had to adapt because and then the modern games, the competition is higher. Who is the best? Who wants to win? There is no cost sometimes, you see, all the problems that we have with the athletes. And that's not the idea, what they had before. And the traditional games, when they bring it to the city, they had to adapt because they want to show. But at the same time, some of them was better than the other ones. See, what's the best, it starts showing. But many times the leaders, they quit like the soccer. If your team was winning with 7-1, they would stop the game. They didn't want them to push. The result was not important, but they want to celebrate. For sure, who wins, they celebrate. They dance and they are so happy because some of them were enemies in the past. In the past, I mean, some of the Chavante was enemy with Carajá, for instance. And then, you know, they still have this memory of enemies of the war that they have before. And this is interesting that the way that they organize the game, they would never put like Chavantes and Paraná in the first round. If they are the best one, the last one, okay, it's fine. But not to start with this. They have to, they know about history. They have to know, you know, how they start the games. What I'm trying to say that nowadays, you know, they know what's the meaning of what sport is, this high level competition, but at the same time, they don't want to do this. But you know, they are in this different world, but in between, sometimes I hope I can.
Beatrice, could you stop sharing the screen, please? So we could see you. We could stop sharing the screen.
Okay. Can you see now?
You can share stop. Screen, Sanjay. Can you stop sharing the screen? I can. Okay, fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question is, since everybody is leaning toward the Olympic game, all are following the Olympic game, they want to participate in Olympic game. So how can we motivate the student player towards the indigenous game, towards the traditional game? How can we motivate them?
Beatrice, could you hear that?
Yeah.
You want us to repeat it?
Yes, please, because he's helped me to change here the screen.
No, it's okay. It's fine.
It's okay.
It's okay now. You change.
Okay. Fine.
Okay. Yeah, did you see you want the question to be repeated?
Yes, please.
Sanjay?
Okay. Ma'am, since everybody is leaning towards the Olympic game, they want to participate in Olympic game, they want to practice Olympic game, but how can we motivate them towards the indigenous game, towards the traditional game? So what kind of process we can apply to motivate them?
Yeah, well, I think the leaders like Carlos was more interested to do this kind of, to help them. But it's hard for them to practice, to come to the city as an athlete, to live with them, to have everyday practicing, and to go to the Olympics. It's possible, some of them, yes. Some of them, they are already living in the city. But if you bring someone that are inland, you know, that is very good, and then to come to the city, to live with those other athletes, that's not easy for them. They have a motivation, but the way of their life, the way that they think, it's different. But we tried to have one agreement with Spain once. There is a professor there at that time. He was very motivated to invite them to stay there because we have very good facilities there to help them. But it was so hard that it didn't work out. But yes, they still have this idea, Carlos, Terena at least, to organize a team. Soccer probably is a little bit easier but the other ones like swimming, for instance, or volleyball, I mean, it's not in their culture. Probably soccer, yes, they have this dream because soccer, all of them play soccer, and probably some running, probably. But what's hard is to live their life, come to the city, share life with the other athletes. That's something hard.
How about wrestling? Because wrestling, we find them to be wrestling.
Yeah, wrestling, yeah. The wrestling is different than what they do. They have beautiful way of doing. Beautiful. It's amazing. But yeah. Okay. Archery, they have different kind of archery because the idea is to hunt, and they have different kinds of hunting. Big animals, birds, and they have different ways of.
So, Beatrix, thank you for that. Now, Darling, please.
Very, very interesting. This is one of the great joys that I have personally, is to hear not just know the dates, but to know the story behind how things have progressed in many countries. And you know, Beatriz, you know that I am not an anthropologist by any stretch, but it seems as though countries that have acknowledged their people who are indigenous or who were there first are much more enriched and know their history and the story of oppression and the story of people trying to make a better life for themselves. So I've been watching some of the chats that the participants have, and they're mentioning that this was really very interesting to see the progression of how this happened. And for Brazil, it's sort of a newer revelation since what, 1988 for the Constitution, and then 1996 was something else. But at any rate, but that has not been very long. So my question to you is, are the group, are they continuing to hold on to those traditions? But how is their formal education so that they can eventually help bridge the worlds between their traditional world and now the upcoming modern world?
Yeah, well, we have different ways. Like some of the schools are inland, you know, for children and youth. See, that's some of them are the community are nearby the city. Like I work in south of Mato Grosso, and then the politics are to bring them, that the whole idea of to integrate them, and that it's like a neighborhood, a big neighborhood there with 2,000 people. It's a big one, and then they are there, and then they come to school, but the prejudice is very high. We still have, you know, in some areas like in Mato Grosso do Sul was amazing because the city moved there. They went there those times for lands. They wanted to have the property. And the indigenous who were there, and they have a lot of fights. The land problem, the land is a big problem. See? And then it's hard for them to study. Very hard. It's not easy because the way of they think is different. It's different. Like math, they have a lot of problems with math. You know, but they are very good. For instance, in media, they film, they do wonderful things. To speak, they are good, but like to more traditional way of knowledge, they have problems. Yes, but not many of them. I had students there; they were taking master, and she did her very good master. We have very brilliant indigenous people. We have women that when they speak, it's amazing. You know, they are leaders. I think some people are just born this way. I don't know, you know, but they are some very good. Like you, Darlene, you are very good. Anyhow, but
you're funny.
What I'm saying, yeah, it's not easy for them. It's not easy. But the education, and now, well, we had a program. That recognized their language, and then for small children, they could learn their language and Portuguese, and that was something new. And they had the first language to teach in the school was like Gang language, and then Portuguese as second language. But, you know, it depends on the government. That's something that our democracy is not very stable. Of the president and the logistics, they give more power to them or help them, or sometimes they just cut, like, don't have money, and then they have to cut. But they go. I mean, they're still fighting. Now in the university, we have a special place for them. They're coming more and more. Like in the state university that I belong here in Campinas, they come 3 years ago. In Paraná, they were there for many years. And I think for men, probably if a woman is married, it's a problem because the husband many times cannot follow, and then she has to stay in the city, and the children say, it's always problem for women, more problem than for men. But you know, they are, you know, and we have some universities have a special, what they call, they come and stay 1 month in the city, and then 2 months. And then the professor from the university goes to the land and then teach them there. But it's a program more for education. It's more specific ones. Then it's more for education. Yeah. If you want like to study medicine, you have to come to the city. There's no specific for biology.
You know, when Dr. Martin Thoms was on with us from the UK a few days ago, he talked a lot about opportunity, but this is an example again of access and opportunity. And I love the idea of the university bringing them to university, but then also sometimes going to their area, because it's important for everybody to learn about the situation or the environment so that good things can come from that. Many times if we sit in our offices at the universities, we know the university well, but we don't know the context that the education needs to benefit. So I think that's a wonderful idea that you're doing. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Kluka. Rosa, your remarks, please. Rosa.
Hi.
Hi.
Great.
Oh, hi.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Every time I listen to you speaking about this topic, it's an enlightenment, because I do believe society in general has a great debt to the indigenous people of the world, and as it is said, in the cosmovision of the world, the owners of the land, okay? And we still have lots to learn in order how to care about Mother Earth, okay? The planet in which we live. So I'm very pleased to listen to your presentation and that this topic, because it brings enlightenment towards independent movements that have been taking place around the world, and indigenous people have had a strong history, different in some places, but similar, in order to be recognized by their rights. And it is good that finally sport gets to be there as well. Because as I said, we always have all the areas of society, such as education, health, and the other components, but always sport sometimes is the last stage to get into being known by society in general. Now, Beatriz, I am curious about how in the education system in Brazil is acknowledged some indigenous games or indigenous, I would say, jokes, or jokes in the sense of part of the content, knowledge of the indigenous people. Because according to QPE, Quality Physical Education, it is important to incorporate in what you get, I mean, the culture of the society and indigenous tradition, it's important. So how much information of indigenous game is within the QPE or the physical education curriculum in Brazil, for example?
You mean how they can help
No,
No.
it's, you know, all physical education, I mean, has, I would say, maybe the traditional sports, I mean, what we call Western sports. So what about some indigenous games, indigenous traditions related with physical activity? Are they incorporated in the physical education curriculum?
Yeah, yes. Well, I don't think so. No. I think no. What they incorporated was the capoeira that came from the black people. The capoeira was very good, but the other ones, I think only like some of the, not the games, but some plays. Yes, some plays. Yes, and they brought. They incorporate a lot of food, some of the meaning of the, I think the meaning, yes, that people understand better the meaning of the traditional games, but not the practice itself, because they are so different. And those games were much more related to the hunting, the way they live to survive, and very, very few. But I think that those indigenous games gave more the society and some of the teachers that to understand the importance to celebrate more than compete. That's they brought. But at the same time, they are bringing in different. They are not depend on this national Olympic or they call indigenous games. They are creating their lanes, different ones. And with the help of the physical education teachers. Because in the beginning, the physical education teacher didn't want to understand, had difficult to understand what they wanted. And then even to work in these national games, the leaders prefer to invite some people from other areas, from humanity, because they want them to compete, and they said, no, we don't want to compete. Yes, they're going to win, but it was hard. But you know, they were much more sensible. I think the other way around, that was more common. But to bring to the curriculum, I don't think that is still, we're much more in the school related to sport.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
And in fact, just give some information.
Fatima?
Yes.
Your views. Yeah, we'd like to hear you. Yeah.
What?
Your views. Heard something? What?
It was a very, very interesting presentation. Congratulations, Maria Beatriz. I have a question. What were the repercussion impact the Olympic Games of Rio de Janeiro on the indigen?
Yeah, well, I think, well, I don't think that we have research on this, but they were invited, some of them were invited for the opening ceremony, but they could watch on TV. Many of them have TVs, and not in Amazon, but in some areas, yes, they could follow. But it's not something that they are, I think they watch much more football or some, it's not something that they are much more interested. Some of them, yes, and, but especially people that are in the cities. Some of them are living there. I think it's like different.
I believe they had some pre-Olympic games, right? The indigenous people, they had some games before the Olympics.
No, what they had there was well, they didn't have a pre-Olympic. They had what they call this national. The leaders ought to have together with the Olympic Games to bring them together to show them that's something that they want to. And then they had the national indigenous games, yes, to show okay, we do something different. They always try, but and it helps the country and the other. Like when we had this international one that came from New Zealand, from the US and from Mexico, and then they came in to show beautiful games. It's amazing how rich is the culture, not the Brazilian culture, but you know, from the New Zealand and then the Mexico, they had this, it's something that is so rich. And they came, and it was in some way, it was very important. It was not the way that they do, it's more simple, but the international one, the government was involved, they came the president, all of this, and then the United Nations was there, it was this big, you know, atmosphere. But, we could see, you know, how rich it is, and then we should, you know, give them more opportunity to come and to show all of this.
Thanks, Fatima. Devla, Philip, I think you could, how about a presentation? You could say a few words for that.
What I think I experience when I see BS research is the huge difficulty we have of measuring or trying to understand those indigenous games or traditions from our Western point of view. We always have the tendency to bring them to our standards. I mean, many questions like, oh, and what about them going to the Olympic Games? It has nothing to do. I mean, they're different. So I'm going to ask Bia to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, thank you. Thank you, Philip. Sujit, are you there?
Yes.
Sujit Panigre?
Hello.
Sujit, yeah. For you. Yes. You could speak now. Yeah, I saw you. He's Sujit Panigre, one of our coordinator, first coordinator with us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sujit,
it was actually, it was such a beautiful presentation. In fact, just as a coincidence, so India, there's a program called Fit India, and as part of Fit India, from the 8th of this month, from the 8th of June, so there's a new campaign on traditional sports, indigenous sports, like what Rosa was talking about was also about integrating that as part of the physical education program. And so, so there's a lot of activities which is starting to happen in India where there's a lot of focus on indigenous sports. And it was really great actually learning what's happening in Brazil and other places. So I think there are a lot of takeaways in this particular presentation, even for me, because as part of Fit India mission, it's good to know what's happening across the globe and apply that also in some of the things that we are doing. In fact, so there are two things which are happening right now. There are a set of videos which are being created, 10 for 10 sports. So on how to play the game, the rules of the game, and so that it can actually be applied to schools across India. And the other thing which is happening is there are 36 states. So there are at least 1 or 2 indigenous games which are being identified. And so there are partner states. So basically, so 18 states will have their corresponding partner states. And whenever there's a concept called Fit India School Week. Whenever that is celebrated, you have to do the traditional game of the other state, of your partner state. This is just to give a sense of what is being planned. And I think the takeaway from today's this thing, so we can actually take a lot of inputs and also apply that for Indian context. So that is my advice.
Thank you, Sujit. Kishore sir?
Yeah. Well, let me tell something. We have here some people that are organized. They have this big organization of traditional games, but not related with indigenous. Yes, it can be also. But traditional games that came from Spain, from Europe, or from India, from different parts of the world. And then they are more linked to the university. They are trying to bring to the curriculum. That's something, in fact, new. They start probably 6 years ago. You know, some professor at the university that studied traditional games. That's something. And they are.
Yes.
And I know about the Indian. It's great what we're doing there.
Yes, what Beatriz is indicating is very much true, particularly in post-colonized countries, in which we have a division between indigenous games and also traditional games. So most common is that traditional games are those that were combined by what those traditions the colonizers brought, and then they were mixed with what was going on in the particular territories. So those are the traditional games, but besides that, thanks God that some indigenous games survived. So there we got both, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Kishore, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. I think I congratulate the presentation made by Madam Maria Beatriz Rocha Ferreira. It's an excellent subject which needs focus. Women in the indigenous peoples, games, power and social status. Because this is normally it is undermined. Normally this area is not much an area of concern and not much debated or discussed. But it makes a formidable part, because indigenous is the first people, the first nation, and aborigines. Nowadays, aborigines word, they are not. I think it's not the preferred word. Is indigenous, and they are the guardian of the earth. The people who are the guardians in many places, all over the world, and who are being susceptible to exploitation to the maximum. Though the guardian of earth. There are 370 million indigenous people in 70 countries all over the world. 370 million. And the United Nations have a special charter to recognize their rights and also to prevent them from exploitation. And in India too, India is a unite in diversity. We have 104 million indigenous people in the country, our country. That forms around 8.6% of our population, Indian population. And there are 705 officially recognized ethnic groups in India. And that is why in the indigenous games in India are also very, very prevalent, very, very popular in many parts of the country. In many parts of the country, different types of indigenous games are there. Like, it is very popular. Like we have Kho-Kho, Kabaddi, in martial arts games like Kalaripayattu, Thamta, Silambam, and very excellent indigenous games are there. In fact, especially for women too, the participation in this can be a factor of social change to lift them and hold them and lift them to the, to give them the due and respect and dignity and bring them to the public life. So I think that is the reason why 9th August, International Day for World Indigenous People, 9th August is being celebrated. And there are, I think I would congratulate the effort made by Brazil also in this direction, because it is for the first time ever in the World Indigenous Games was held in Brazil in 2015. It was a landmark. And for the first time ever, the entire, indigenous people, they got together and had this wonderful games celebrated there. And after that, in 2017 too, but it was not as popular in Canada. One more games were there. So it is the need of the hour for that physical education people to have the knowledge base and also the skills on how we can support the indigenous people and their games to make them empowered, make them empowered for the social change and get them also to the limelight and public life. They are also, so this is a very important topic has been touched, and Madam Beatrice has touched the crucial areas where one physical education teacher and the community coach need to focus and take care to bring this our brothers and sisters from the indigenous group also to the main point. Thank you very much for the excellent presentation, and I congratulate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kishore sir. Thank you so much. I'd just like to ask Beatrice, because when you start off talking of this group, how do you approach them? Because what I found here was many places you don't have an access. They don't allow the other human. Like when we come, they find that are we going to enter into theirs? So how did the first way they could enter and get them into confidence, trust in terms of research?
Well, well, when you go to the land, it's very difficult because you have to have approval of the government. You have to get some vaccine to go. It's hard, and you have to be accepted for them to go to study there. As anthropologists, in the beginning it was easier because they control all the information. But then these indigenous people were so tired of anthropologists. They were there just studying, not giving back anything. And then, okay, but when with the indigenous games, it's more open. When the education side, no, we need to take care of them also. It starts being more open to have access to them and them to come to the city too, to us. There was the exchange. And like Marcos Terena, through him, he was very open, he has very open mind, and he wants to have more access to the universe to exchange information. He knew that he need us too, to be partner of the whole system. And then because he has open mind, and then we have this access more to study them. And he is someone very special because he knows that he needs some to have more access to the media and to other groups. Okay, and through education, yes, because now they come to the university and go there. The exchange is much easier. But as anthropologists, that was hard because they were you are anthropologists. Oh, please, no, we don't want you there. We're tired of you. And see, it's the whole process, the whole history. And but it's still some because of the COVID now, COVID-19, they have so many problems. They ask us to start organize a campaign, and then we have a campaign to the Amazon, one of the Ticunas ethnic group, because they need us. And then we start organizing. See, I think this COVID-19 changed everything, changed the relationship, the contact with us and with them. And it's something so new in our lives that everything is changing a lot. And even the government cannot put a barrier because they need this help, and then we are helping the way that we can. That's something very new in the world and with them too. But it's not easy, and I think the biggest that facilitated the way to access them is through education more than research, and to sport and to these traditional games. Yeah.
Thank you, Beatrix. So before we close, I'd like to inform all the participants another session awaits us tomorrow by Fatima, who's there among the panelists. And I need to remind you, because since we have got an Olympian, we're all excited, waiting for the tomorrow's session too. So on behalf of everybody present here, including from the Ministry of Youth Affairs and Sports, Halo India, our principal, Dr. G. Kishore, LNCPE, and you can see a horse. This is the Queen of Jhansi. You can see?
Ah,
yeah.
yes.
So she's one, because our college is named after her. And all the participants, I need a big thank you. It was wonderful because you've done a great job of, especially with the indigenous, where we can't even think of reaching, you've entered in. And I think you've done a big, you've opened the path for many to come in, and where there is an exchange. So I think you've done a wonderful service from humanitarian point of view, I need to thank you and salute you for such a wonderful, it's not a session. It doesn't end with a session because you've done a great humanitarian service. So thank you so much, Beatrix. The wonderful session. I'd like to thank Philip too, because Philip was here with you. And thank you, Philip. I'd like to thank Fatima. Thank you so much for being with us. And we'll be seeing you tomorrow again. I'd like to thank Rosa, Kluka, and we have Sujit, Kishosa, and each and every participant also here. A big thank you and thank you so much. Namaste.
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 Thank you.
Bye.
Hi. Rosa.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow. Are you bringing anybody? Are you bringing anybody? Olympians? Can you bring somebody?
It's not possible with pandemic, COVID.
You can't bring them on the screen. Screen not possible.
It's not possible.
Social distancing.
No issues.
No. Another time.
I know you're enough. You're in another time.
Without pandemic.
Another time.
Yeah.
Nice. I know, nice.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're most welcome.
Thank you.
Hi. Hi.
Thank you. Thank you.
Rosa. Hi.
Bye-bye.
Beatrix, bye. Nice seeing you. Okay, sir.